Hello, welcome back to Tourism Overhaul. My name is Carrie Hall, your host, and we're here today on location at the UNESCO World Heritage Site of Bridgetown and its garrison. Well, actually, we're in the garrison part at the National Museum of Barbados. And we're here today to discuss a very important issue, and one that is very, very dear to my heart, that of cultural heritage tourism. And we're going to have a discussion with Mr. Kevin Farmer, who is the Deputy Director of the Barbados Museum and Historical Society. Now, cultural heritage is extremely important, is one of the most viable options for Barbados to diversify our tourism industry. And it also, once structured properly, has the capacity to be a significant economic driver for the country. So I look forward very much to our conversation as we speak about cultural heritage as a very important component of the tourism industry. And we also look at the development of cultural heritage tourism as well as its potential. Now, a major focus today will also be on the Afrocentric side of our tourism product. And when I say that, I mean taking a deep dive into our African heritage and looking at ways that we could develop and promote this aspect. So I can't wait to have this conversation. Mr. Farmer is a learned individual who I have the utmost respect for, and he does a lot of phenomenal work in the area of heritage and history in Barbados. And as usual, I'm inviting you in to have it with us. So let's go and talk to Mr. Kevin Farmer. Hello, Kevin.
Hi,
How are
Carrie.
you?
I'm good. It's nice to be outside, not wearing a mask, even though socially distanced at this time.
And that's exactly where we are, very socially distanced. But I'm so happy to be here today, and I can think of no greater person to talk to on this very critical topic of cultural heritage tourism, because I know you are well versed and much learned in this particular area. And I just wanted to share some information with the Barbadian people in terms of enlightening them on this particular, and I don't consider cultural heritage to even be a niche. I look at it as a tangible expression of who we are as a people and a nation. It is who we are. But for the sake of niche tourism, we will say that it is. And I just think that is one that has the greatest potential for diversification in the tourism product. And I just want you and I to have this conversation to really flesh out and take a deep dive into this particular topic. And first, I would just like you to explain to the Barbadian people. We hear the word cultural and heritage and we stick them together.
Yeah.
What exactly is cultural heritage, or even cultural heritage tourism?
Okay. So thanks very much for having me. I'm very humbled by the offer and description. I am, but thanks. Cultural heritage for me is really and truly those things that you were brought up hearing, drinking, eating, saying, doing, that's passed on from generation to generation. So sweetbread, fish cakes, the fact that we say honor, the way in which we speak, the syntax that we use, the way in which we dress, the fact that we say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and then good night. All of those things make up our culture. Now, time allows for the use of the word heritage. In some instances, things don't change, even though culture is always changing, but there's some traditions that are maintained. They might be tweaked given technology, and that adds to what is then heritage. Tourism happens to be the conduit by which we combine these things in order to have product. Whether that product is a bottle of rum, a small vat of fish cakes, or someone singing on the stage, or producing a theatrical production or film, utilizing those elements of our culture and heritage, even if it's the backdrop, like where we are today at the Barbados Museum and Historical Society as backdrop. All of that combines into a product that is cultural heritage. And it's one that you must realize can permeate everything. If we think about the clothes that we wear, we don't wear clothes by accident. The places that we buy them from have kept an archival collection of what they've made over years or centuries, depending on how old they are, and they go back to them for inspiration. Much the same way that our cultural practitioners might come to a museum or visit a historic house, or simply go and visit an elderly person to find out, well, what was it like back when? and use that as inspiration to create something new. What we've got to do better is to monetize and to be systematic about it. To recognize that when persons are in trade schools learning how to be masons and carpenters, that there's some older technique that they should in fact learn, so that when they're given a building, a heritage building, to which there's an incentive given to maintain it, they've got the skills to make it right as how it would have been created. That building is then perhaps used to sell a cultural product. It might be a restaurant or a cafe, or it forms a backdrop for some historical drama or comedy or whatever that someone wants to produce. So all of that ties into what that cultural heritage ecosystem, if I may call it so, is.
Yes.
And then how different people seek to exploit it in the right way and monetize it. And I mean, the best example of this is if you go to the UK, realize that they've got a building code in certain areas that maintains the buildings in a particular way, because along will come a film studio or film crew who wants to shoot a particular scene from a particular era. The streetscape is the same, so it could be 19th century, 1930s, 2021. What then evokes that feeling now is set and the costuming, but the backdrop has been maintained even up to the 21st century. And the plays which are being filmed are in fact not old. This is 2021 and persons are still doing Shakespeare or adaptations thereof in the creation of what they deem to be their culture.
Right.
We've got to recognize that we've got those stories in us. Wouldn't it be fascinating to have a three-part series that looks at the Boston Rebellion? You have the prequel, the actual rebellion, and then the after, and it's all a fascinating story.
Yes, what you're saying is extremely interesting, and the whole thing about telling the story, because I think Barbados, arguably amongst all the other islands in the Caribbean, we have probably one of the most fascinating and compelling stories to tell, because the history in Barbados is unique, and it is in many cases untold. I don't think many Barbadians even know it.
Very true.
And it is what we have, our product, is diverse. I mean, it's almost too much choice dilemma in Barbados. And when you look at the cultural heritage footprint, as I call it, like what you just said, it spans from our Amerindian, African, British, European or Jewish history. Yeah. It is our maritime and military history, genealogy, the Barbados Carolinas connection, our plantations, windmills, rum shops, chattel houses, our built heritage, also our natural heritage, which is, it could be Graham Hall Swamp or Animal Flora Cave or, Harrison's Cave. But then the other side, which is the more intangible, with the performing arts, the visual arts, our oral traditions, like what you just spoke of, cricket, everything that makes us who we are, and there's a story there. Yes. And that's why I fell in love with this area, because it really expands our mind. And I would like Barbadians to be more acquainted with our history, to understand exactly, as I said, who we really are, where we've come from, and it then dictates where we're going. But with respect to this, how do you think so far, in terms of cultural heritage, we have developed and promoted it? And what are the areas that you think we can improve on? Because everything I just said, there's a lot out there. Yeah. But, and the usual suspects, St. Nicholas Abbey, going to the Parliament buildings, and the usual suspects. But do you think we've done a good enough job taking all of these wonderful components we have, our story, and do you think we've showcased ourselves to the world to our ultimate potential? Capacity?
Not to our ultimate potential. Mm-hmm. I think we've done a good job in the last, let's say, 10 years than we did in the previous 20.
Yes.
But there's a lot more to do. Some of the usual suspects perhaps might need some repackaging. I'll use this as an example. There's a large group of descendant persons within the African diaspora that should be flocking to Barbados. Have we created a product that will entice them to come? In small bits, but we need to be a bit more systematic for them to recognize, especially especially let's say for people from the Carolinas, Georgia, the Sephardic Jewish community in New York, the indentured Scots and Irish who would have come here, who would have gone to the South Carolinas and then migrated south down to Texas. A lot of them can trace the familial origins back to Barbados.
Yes.
But let's deal with the African American component of that. There's a lot that they can learn from coming here, if only we create product and remind them, well, they're two ancestral homes, as it were. When you talk about your rice dishes in the Carolinas, and even the use of galagishi, that mother tongue originates in an island. That island is called Barbados. But do enough of them know that? The answer is no, because we need to repackage and retell that story. We might even have to do it maybe as a trail system, where we make those connections back across the sea to understand where you've come from, but to engage with and to recognize what the similarities are. I think that's what we need to do. But again, it's about system. It doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen simply because someone had a really bright idea, got up one morning, yes, let's go. No, there has to be system in place. There's got to be policy in place to incentivize. Therefore, there needs to be then the system allows for a certain level of risk taking in terms of providing money for the person to create the product, and then the help on the marketing side to see it grow. And it's not going to grow in 3 years. It might grow in 10. If we take a look at how our Crop Over Festival was created, it was created specifically to wow tourists to Barbados in the summer periods. And people tweaked it. They had it early in June, July, and then realized it wasn't working. Let's move it down to August. How do we get the community involved? Because they were in fact bringing back to the community a festival that had been, if not allowed to die, had been in a way suppressed. But they were bringing it back and trying to understand what it was and realize, okay, at some point you can't always hold on to it, but they built the parameters in the box and provided systems to allow it to grow organically. And that's what we need to look for our heritage. Identify the assets, but recognize that within that, there are people who are going to come up with novel ways of interpretation or novel ways of engaging with it. Don't tell them no, but provide that policy, provide the funding, and provide a long gestation period to see if in fact this particular idea actually can gain a footing and grow. And recognizing, again, at all levels,
Yes.
the technical and everything else, you need to be able to encourage it, but you've got to sustain it, and there needs to be a system in place.
I completely agree with you that there needs to be a common and a comprehensive vision where everybody is on board, is going to collaborate and cooperate in order to move towards this. If we've determined that cultural heritage, a structured cultural heritage product is where we're going forward. And what you said in terms of genealogy, Barbados, in terms of genealogy tourism, is perfectly poised because of our history, our location, the forward and backward linkages, etc. But I would like to ask you, in terms of getting this up and running, I agree, policy framework, technical assistance, everything. What are we doing right? Like, what is happening and what are we doing right, and the areas that we could probably improve on. And one of those areas to me is the whole issue of education. And this is where I feel historians need to be involved in the process, compensated for their intellectual property, to assist in, because we can't move forward unless we understand what the history is, the value of that history, and also have that knowledge where every Barbadian becomes a tourism ambassador, particularly frontline staff. It could be frontline staff in hotels, coach and taxi drivers, tour guides, etc., to be able to tell that story and to ensure the consistency and accuracy of heritage interpretation. And I think historians could advise on the areas that are best poised, historically of extreme historic value to take off, and also create like a certification program where they provide the knowledge, because we would then know this is accurate. Because trust me, tourists coming out to your country, they have done their research, they have the receipts, and they know when it's like, no, it was not 1643. It actually was 1712 when that happened. And I've been on a couple tours where I have like, not really so right, but you know, if no one knows, it's not a big deal. I believe in heritage and accuracy and heritage interpretation. Do you think that historians can be better utilized? And also, with all of our assets that we have, what are the ones that are working? We tend to focus, and you know, you and I have talked about this, on the Eurocentric, on our British heritage, to the exclusion of most else. And what heritage assets are working for Barbados, even though we may not have that structure that we're talking about at this time?
All right. So let's go back to the historian bit.
Yes.
And I'll start off with this. The Ministry of Education, I know, has brought in a series of educators and historians to review the existing curriculum.
Very
because
good.
for a very long time, history was no longer a core subject in school. It feels almost like 20 years, it might be more like 15. But they're going to be reintroducing history as a core subject back into both the primary and secondary curriculum. That's important. Now that's important on many levels. The first of all, us understanding who we are and having a concept of self. That's one. The history then that is taught means that students might realize that, well, in fact, this is not a dead subject, because there are now additional avenues out there within this sector called tourism that I can actually go and utilize my skill set to be utilized. So the University of the West Indies, I use KFL as an example, has produced a lot of graduates with degrees in history and heritage studies who are poised to be able to be the ones to provide new product, or the research for new product, the scripting of new product, but there's no ecosystem for them to do this in. Persons that expect, oh, I want to know X, call, I want X, and as you said, not expect to remunerate the person for that, but realizing that what they have at their fingertips, or what they can go and research, are the bones for a product. Now, you've got those bones. Where is the niche within the niche? And I'll use, for example, because I don't want to be accused of being biased and of saying one product is better than the X. I will just use these two as examples. I'll use the Barbados Museum for obvious reasons. We did a duppy tour in October of last year, where we went and looked at various burial grounds around the island, or places where there are interesting ghost stories. Now note, we use the Barbadian term, duppy, because that's how we refer to our dead, how we refer to our ghosts. We then did the research where, for example, everyone knows that really fantastic folk song, Millie Gone to Brazil. But we actually found the spot where the person who would have murdered her worked, and also the spot where her body was left. That formed part of the tour. We were only going to do the tour for one day, one night. We put it up on IG. Within a matter of hours, the one bus tour was sold out. Persons called and asked, and we said, okay, we'll accommodate. We ended up selling 4 bus tours. I can't even call it. I'm going to use that nice term, it blew up. We put on that tour for 3 consecutive weekends after that, all sold out, which told us 2 things. One, there was an absolute hunger for imbibing what those different facets of that Barbadian story was. Utilizing a part of our history that we don't always want to talk about. You know, we've had issues with the dead, but people were interested. So much so, there's like, so we're doing this again next year. Of course, we're doing it again in 2021. It just shows that there are particular stories out there that if you allow people the free rein to use their imagination to think about what it can be done, and then provide the framework to actually execute, people will come. And all of this is against a backdrop, anecdotally, as we keep being told, oh, Barbadians don't want to know about their history. That's not true. In fact, that's a lie. Barbadians do want to know about their history. Actually, they want to know about it 24/7. Whether they're reading it, doing a tour, being on a coach, reading something, watching it on television, hearing it on a podcast, they want to know. And guess what? There's a larger Barbadian diaspora outside of Barbados that wants to know too. And guess what? They've got friends. Their friends want to know what they're doing or where they're going. So then all of a sudden, 6 degrees of separation speaks to a really large market that we don't always cater to, but we've got to learn to cater to.
Yes.
Yeah. I hope that half answers that question.
Yes. You're absolutely correct. I see an awakening in social and national consciousness that was not there before. And just like what you're saying, when the NCF put on their bittersweet memories of sugar and rum tour, and they were like about 15 or 20 buses full to capacity. But my only regret was I didn't see some visitors on it. It was locals. And 2 years running, completely sold out. And then they had one with a food theme, which I thought was absolutely phenomenally produced. And I said, my people are ready. When they do those walking tours of Bridgetown, place washed away with people.
It is.
And I'm saying we need to strike now. My people are finally ready to receive whatever it is. They want to know about themselves, especially Barbadian culture. And when we look at Barbadian culture, it's a kind of a hybrid between our British culture and our African, and we've created this Barbadian culture. That's how I view it.
And even in there, that's changing because we have an Asian component.
Correct. It's even more diversified now.
We have a slight Armenian component that people forget in the intangible.
They don't get the poor Indians a look in, and that is something that has to be developed. That why Bridgetown is called Bridgetown.
Correct.
You know, the Indian bridge that was there, that the Amerindians built. And I do not want, they say when a man doesn't know his history, he's like a tree without roots. I am from that school of thought. I believe it's very important for you to know your history. Because I had to study the history of Barbados by kind of default, because of when I was doing my last course of study. I was grateful because I then had a perspective of Barbados that I never would have ever had. And it taught me so much to understand how the past informs the present and how we can chart the course for the future. But even though, as you know, I'm getting warmer because to discuss the whole African component, but I'm not quite done with this area yet. Another question I have for you is COVID. COVID has completely decimated the economy of Barbados.
It has.
Many people are out of jobs. Many businesses have shuttered. And we have to look for ways. And tourism, ironically, as tourism collapsed, the economy collapsed behind it. But tourism, ironically, is the industry that the country will look at for its economic salvation and to pull us out of the economic ditch, which is an irony. Because tourism, COVID, movement across borders is what spreads it, yet we still have to depend on that. What I'm saying is, how can we, the small, micro, and medium-sized enterprises, entrepreneurs, communities particularly, have suffered dramatically. How can we, as we emerge out of COVID, use cultural heritage as an economic driver to bring about that job creation, wealth creation, poverty alleviation that will be so desperately needed now for Barbados, as we try to create opportunities for people to earn revenue, to restart their businesses, to open new businesses. And tourism can do it. As I keep saying, tourism-led recovery through tourism-led economic diversification, which will come through tourism diversification. How can cultural heritage play a part? Because cultural heritage is so broad. It covers the whole gamut. How can we create new opportunities for Barbadians to make money and reach the visitor and get their fair share of the visitor economy coming out of COVID? And we are emerging.
We are emerging. I'll take it in 2 steps. The first step is, if your doors are closed, how do you reach people with your tangible and your intangible product? It comes down now to content creation, and that content creation is going to be driven by access to the net, driven by the ability for persons to download what you want and then pay for it. Whether it's a physical product, again, we talk about, I use the element of fish cakes, and because it resonates with Barbadians. It's one of those things that if you travel now, the family will say, well, bring me up some. And you can do that. You can freeze it and you can take it with you. If we look at the States, look at Amazon. During a time of lockdown, they got great revenue because they were able to get product from point A to point B. Our tourism product is about getting that product packaged from point A to point B. So it's the physical and the virtual. The virtual now, we need to spend a little bit of money to allow people to build out that content. Whether they're going to use film as animation or film as film, they need to be allowed and given that incubator money to build out the content, which can be monetized. It reaches people wherever they are, but it also acts as a soft form of advertising in that someone might like a particular show, but that was really great. Let me now use that. I want to visit that place. Game of Thrones. There are certain certain sites in the world where Game of Thrones was shot, which are now tourist sites. People want to go there and see where this picture was made. You know, they want to visit a particular castle in Ireland because that was used as a backdrop. So using film as a soft way of advertising your tourism that brings people in.
I completely agree with you. Are we there yet though? Because we have started a film authority, I believe. I have been in positions where people have approached, and there's, I know, and some people can't see that vision. I completely agree with everything. I think that's the best form of promotion, of people coming to the island, seeing the island, and wanting to go there, because the Game of Thrones is a classic example of that, and Lord of the Rings with New Zealand.
Yeah. And I'm told Pirates of the Caribbean, in its heyday, a lot of people went to St. Vincent because some of it was shot there just to see where it was shot. So, you know.
So we're talking about mindsets then.
Yes.
How do we change mindsets to get them to see the value of cultural heritage? Like even for the tourism industry, in terms of working better with the cultural industries, the entertainment sector, the whole issue of visual arts, of seeing art galleries as a part of the tourism product, the arts and craft, even people in the cottage industries who, instead of putting a mint on a pillow, put a little piece of fudge or a tamarind ball or a sugar cake, which is a true expression of our culture. All that's culture.
It is.
Because that's a part of, that's food culture, but that's part of who we are, and traditions. How do we change the mindset from traditionals? And I may be putting you on the spot. Because
a little bit?
Yeah. And if you don't know, I'm here trying as well, because we have to. What I'm trying to say is we have to change the mindset to see tourism now holistically. Yeah. And everything that we are as a people and nation is who the visitor is looking for, because they want authentic experiences, real experiences, complete immersion. And Sansi and Son is no longer a unique, it's an iconic component, but no longer a unique component. You can get that anywhere.
I might take that a step back and say not tourism. I think that the key thing is recognizing our history and heritage is to be embraced. It is something not to be ashamed of. It is something that we should be proud of. The products that we create from it speaks to us. And when we create those products from a place of pride, when we create them from a place, this is ours, and you need to know about what we do, that then feeds into everything else. Because it therefore means that as soon as that person lands and they ask, where should I go? Isn't that you sat down these people in an educational workshop and say, oh, these are the 5 places that they should go to for a good rum shop experience. People know it because they've lived it. So the important thing to me with those bus tours that you mentioned, where there's so many locals, the locals, because they're now engaging with their history and recognizing, this is part of me, and there's that pride, it then makes it easier for them to discuss it when asked a question by someone visiting. Oh, what is this? Where can I get this from? Where shall I go? Can you tell me about, why your country is the way it is? Because all of a sudden, formally and informally, we have engaged in a mass education of our people that their history is not bad, that their history, as contested as it is what made them who they are and why we've all ended up in this space. But out of that, here are the many things that we've created. And that then permeates everything from the architecture which is used, to the clothes which are worn, to the food which is drunk, to the drinks, both alcoholic and non-alcoholic, that are imbibed, to the sports that we play, to how we use the sea, to the fish that we catch. Because all of a sudden, it's no longer segmented, it's not siloed, there's a massive groupthink. This is what represents us. And as such, the product that we give is us. So you don't have to be thinking about it. It almost becomes second nature. That requires serious investment, major groupthink, and moving away these silos. Because all the discussion of having a large forum where the cultural practitioners are and the tourism people are, great. Well, where do finance people? Because if they don't understand it, it can't get funded.
But we tend to keep talking to ourselves a lot too.
Precisely. So we need to stop talking to ourselves.
To each other, the same people. We keep talking to the same people all the time.
So we need to bring in the other people who are supposed to help this thing get done. Listen to what they have to say. But sometimes it's not always a matter of convincing them, but understanding what they view as challenges and say to them, well, that really isn't a challenge, you know. There's a way to get around that. But that groupthink needs to happen. Or else we're going to be stuck with a fantastic product that we've been marketing since the 18th century that is not adapting and pivoting as quickly as it can in a changing environment where anyone can go to see sun, sand, and sea at a cheaper cost. But it is our heritage that is the pull. It is the uniqueness of our culture that will make people come. It's the uniqueness of our culture that will allow them to stay where they are and want to buy a bottle of rum or buy a sweetbread or wear particular clothing spun out of Barbadian cotton, because they understand, well, you know something, this is not only a unique story, but in certain instances, this is an example of what is the best of this type of product anywhere in the world.
Okay, I completely, what you said there is so true in terms of us valuing ourselves. And I think that's what has been missing. And that's why we've been squandering phenomenal opportunities for showcasing who we are and telling our story to the world. Is because one, we don't know that story, and you said there's a move afoot where we are opening ourselves to, and the ministry, etc., is getting involved to make sure that happens. And there's also, to me, we've been indoctrinated where foreign is better, and somehow we have devalued. You know, even from our food, we prefer imported food or foreign food, our culture, and we have now turned a corner where the world is shifted and it's consumer driven, and they don't want us to do this because it's consumer driven. And it's like, oh shoot, the tourists looking for authenticity and immersion, so we now pivot in that direction. I want us to do it because it's the right thing to do. Being Barbadian, 100% uncompromisingly Bajan, is the right thing to do, and being Bajan is how we differentiate ourselves from the rest of the world. There's only one Barbados. We don't want to be a Dubai or Morocco or Croatia. Being Barbadian is good enough, and I think we can stand on our own 2 feet as a country or as a tourism destination, because we rely on tourism for the foreign exchange to drive our economy. So it's not a case where I want us to do it, and the thing is, we may be forced to do it now because tourists, if it's not happening here, they will go somewhere else where it's happening, where people get it and they value their heritage and their history and their culture, and they're able to interpret and showcase it in a way that they want to receive it. So I think this is good for Barbados, because I think we need to do that, and if that is the nudge that is going to take it, even though I prefer for us to do it from an organic place. So this pride that you speak of, are we in the right direction? Because we see a movement now within society towards wanting to learn.
I think
where do we get them to value in a way where in our marketing efforts or promotional efforts, we are giving it Barbados raw and valuing what we have, you know what I mean? And using on traditional aspects. Our centenarians, you know, our chattel houses. We tend to, in the Caribbean, it's just not Barbados, paddleboard. a nameless, faceless beach that could be anywhere in the world, as opposed to iconic symbols that once you see, you know, that's BIM.
Yeah.
Even if it's a plate of bread, cuckoo and flying fish, or macaroni pie, because much as we say cuckoo and flying fish is the national dish, don't tell that to Bajans or the tourists.
Yes.
Nobody don't eat more macaroni pie than the visitors. I know that firsthand because I've spoken to enough of them.
Yep.
So, and not to be ashamed or think that who we are is not good enough,
Yeah.
but to be proud. And this is why I admire Jamaicans, not to compare Barbadians to Jamaicans. They are fiercely, uncompromisingly proud. Like I went into a Ritz-Carlton in Jamaica and they were serving ackee and saltfish on the buffet. You go down in the bar at the bottom of the beach, Red Stripe, Oliver, the comedian is on the TV. There's a jerk pit at the bottom of the garden. There's Ritz-Carlton, the world-renowned 5-diamond property Ritz-Carlton that say we're going to Jamaica, we adapting to Jamaica culture is so powerful and so all-embracing and world-renowned.
They've gotten there now. Maybe as in all things, sometimes you don't always need to reinvent the wheel. Sometimes you can take a peek behind the curtain, see how others have changed and learn from it.
Yes.
Because there was a point in time when they didn't do that. But they do it now because the recognition that, well, you know something? My country is my brand. And who I am authentically is what people want to come and have an experience. So whether it's GoldenEye or Shellshire or Blue Lagoon, they are experiencing Jamaica. I will say that I'm seeing that in Barbados.
You think Bob Marley had a lot to do with his global fame in terms of that?
I think his global fame after a while.
Like how Rihanna then could do it for us.
Because realize
has
that
been doing it for
they
us.
culturally had a stronger pushback against Marley than we have against Rihanna.
Right.
So
okay.
utilizing Rihanna, utilizing that story of a global superstar, and recognizing that guess what, the places that she swam, the food she ate, wherever she went, is what made her come and enjoy us. However one wants to craft that, I'm not a marketer, so I leave that to them. But when they land, it has to be about us. So I'm going to evoke her song, Here's to the Weekend. That video clip.
You missed out a word.
Here's to the weekend. Here's to the weekend.
Here's to dash weekend.
But what that video does, it really says, well, listen, this is how a group of, at the time, under 30 Barbadians treat the weekend. It's been a hectic week. They've worked hard. It's time to play. Not that play is everything, but it's time to play and recognize what it means to play. But at the same time, not exoticizing the people, not making it seem as though this is a tropical fantasy, because it's not, it's reality. But there's a point in time where we have fun and then we get serious. And I think that is perhaps how we should, in a way, look at how heritage tourism can be used and can be pivoted to embrace that Barbadianness or the Bajanness. And there was a viral clip recently where this newscaster got berated by people in diaspora and Barbadians for the inability to pronounce Bajan. He finally got it right and apologized and came back and said, "Oh, I got it right."
Never thought this day would come.
Never thought that day would come.
Somebody's being berated for not being able to speak Bajan properly.
Yes.
That is it's usually the other way around.
Other way around. So here's the thing. So we talk about that pride you just mentioned about Jamaicans. That viral episode shows that Barbadians have a very deep-seated pride about themselves and their country. And it's fierce in a different way. It's not fierce in a loud way. Because at the end of the day, we truly have no chill. If you want to see some of the best memes ever, just go and check out some Bajan memes.
No,
but
it's brought out the most creative. COVID has brought out the most creative in my people I've ever seen, and I loved it every minute of it.
So how do we harness that in the promotion of product? How do we harness that to create new entertainment shows? How do we harness that to create a t-shirt industry or a meme industry? It's there. It's about the provision of opportunity and somewhere in the mindset to realize or to say, listen, whatever we put our minds to, we can actually do it. But it has to come from a sense of self. And that sense of self is only possible when you really and truly know yourself. And I think we're getting there.
So you're saying that once that happens, because I think, not across you, but I think that that's what's held us back in terms of attaching a value to who we are, and everything from our cuisine to our culture and even our entertainment. For example, this is just the cultural industries. I believe that Barbados can be the entertainment capital of the Caribbean. I think we have so many talented Barbadians in every genre of music. It could be calypso, spooge, bashment, R&B, rock. Across we have spoken word. We've been doing spoken word in this country for years.
Yes.
When in America's Got Talent this year, a spoken word artist won the $1 million.
Really?
I could not believe it. It just shows the global access. And I was like, hey, we've been doing that in Barbados for years. We have some phenomenal spoken word artists. And I think that we could promote us for that, give our entertainers, our cultural practitioners a boost. And I was even proposing like a signature event where there's like a 3-day concert where all Barbadian performers for all 3 days. And you're selling Bajan food and fashion and everything around wherever the venue is. On the last day, Queen of the world, Miss Rihanna, will put in an appearance to give it that boost for us to kind of ride on her coattails.
Yeah.
So for 3 days, it would be spoken word, it would be, go back spooge, pay homage to our, spooge is a Bajan thing.
It is.
Be playing road tennis at it, all of the local, really good, unique selling. We drinking Bajan rum, everything that is 100% us that we are celebrating to the world. 3 days of that, we would decide on what day. Last day, the crescendo, Miss Riri moves through the crowd, hit the stage, and the world goes crazy. The whole world will follow her here. The eyes of the world will be on the festival. And to show me, we spend so much money on foreign acts over the years. It's like, let's reinvest in our people and give them that leg up and that boost. And I don't think putting on a 3-day festival with just local artists across all genres of music and comedy, spoken word, acting, dance, whatever. 3 days, Rihanna closes the show, and we gone stratospheric.
So where buy my ticket? Because you already sold me.
Stratospheric.
So where buy
So it's
my
just
ticket?
little things like that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, we have these low-hanging fruit. Some of them have just swung there for a long time and have dropped off the tree. But what I'm saying is, we could still take that fruit and make some real good jam with it. Ain't over. You understand?
Agreed.
It will never be over. But we need to start thinking broadly and believing in who we are and what we have, attaching a value like the rest of the world does or will, and showcasing Barbados to the world in a way that's unprecedented, that will blow the mind of the world, because Barbados is the most phenomenal rock there is on earth. I love my country. I believe in Barbados. I want Barbados to believe in itself. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Honestly, I think we're getting there. We just need to take certain leaps and not be afraid to fail.
Yes.
View failure actually as a learning experience. Oh, we did that wrong. What worked? What didn't work? Okay, let's do that again. I think that's part of it. Because you mentioned spoken word, and my mind immediately went to, the early history of rap in the US has a lot of Barbadians permeating that early story.
I don't think 2 Bajans know that story. That story should be
maybe 2 or
world
3.
story.
And even just now,
I don't know
when we mentioned Bob, realize that Bob used to be a backup singer for the creator of Spooge.
3 Bajans don't know that. That's what I'm trying to tell you. These stories need to be told, Kevin.
So there those stories that need to be told.
That instill pride. The only reason why I think the pride is lacking is because the lack of knowledge. I think if we knew, the reason why I started and took notice of Barbados is because I had to go and do the PhD, and I had to go back to the beginning of the first settlers and come down. And I had a bird's eye view to Barbados, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But it changed my whole perception of Barbados, Barbadians, the struggle. Because there was a lot of ugly.
Of course.
But how we have persevered and we were resilient and we survived.
It's the survival.
You understand what I mean?
It's the
And we have
survival.
overcome. That spoke to the character. And that made me be proud, even though the story of Barbados is varied from one end of the continuum to the other. I think, and that's why I always was very passionate about educating people. I'm saying the only reason people don't get passionate and excited is because they don't really know.
Yeah.
And once they do, like what you just said, Bob Marley used to back up for Opal and that. We didn't know that. We don't even give credence to Jackie. What poetry was that? But Bob was backup singer. Back up. Here we tell you. That's huge.
Because Jackie was a major ska singer in Jamaica. You know, major.
Especially the youngsters. We need to capture the young people, otherwise all is lost. They need to be educated about this information to instill pride, because they won't be somebody else, either being influenced by cultural again, assimilation, and they don't understand this.
It's a combination of that formal and informal.
Yes.
And we learn so much informally, but informally comes out of a system where there's the opportunity for people to make money. Film or whatever else. There needs to be that seed money that allows people to, oh yeah, I heard about this, so let me research it. Okay, how do I now make this into a product that can actually, you know, help me, allow me to have a living? We need to have that. We need to have that.
I completely, because a lot of the problems are people don't have the financing.
Yeah.
So I don't want to answer, because you can't answer, I can't answer, to see how we shift the system to open up to giving people a chance, because there are a lot of young people out there with great ideas, but they can't crack the code.
Yeah.
They can't get their toe in the door. And a lot of great ideas, and especially with the young people with technology, they are the future of this country, and we need to give them a chance. And we're not going to solve today how we're going to change the mindset to get the door open for them, but all we can do is state that in order for us to get from here to here, these are the things that need to happen to give ourselves a chance to take this country to the next level, pretty much.
Yeah. And then, I mean, again, selfishly, realize that museums, archives, libraries are where these stories are. You don't necessarily have to come and reproduce the story verbatim. You can come and be inspired, and your imagination then allows you to create something out of what is a true story in many multiple ways that allows you then to go and create something once properly resourced to make a living for you and your family and others.
Yes.
But it's a reason why institutions like this exist, and it's necessary that they not only be funded, but the persons who even want to think that there's a career. So I'm going back to secondary school and community college or whatever. Did people even think that if I did history I could do X, or if I decide I want to be a master joiner, there's in fact employment there for me as a master joiner, because there's a whole industry built around the maintenance of traditional architecture and traditional furniture, and there's a need for people to actually maintain it. Really? Well,
but do we have to get there first, where we stop what I call the wanton destruction or the infringement on places of extreme historic value, to be able to value them? I mean, and I don't know if it's a case where a lot of our built heritage are relics of a bygone slave era, and that's why people are indifferent to them, or we're just indifferent. But to value that, understand the story, because I don't believe in sanitizing history. I believe leave it as it is, and let's tell the story.
Tell the story.
How do we get to that point where we then get to the point where we develop that skill set to preserve our adaptive reuse for old buildings, or preserve our old furniture that we used to see at our grandparents' house that you don't see anymore? How do we get from attaching the value to really even start in an industry where we could create job creation or wealth creation or poverty alleviation for entrepreneurs, or just communities young people who are good with their hands? Everybody's not an academic.
Precisely.
How do this part has to happen first for this part to flourish? Don't want to put you on the spot.
I'm going to sound like a wonk. At the end of the day, if there isn't policy to incentivize or to punish, then things will, one, disappear on the one hand, or not be allowed to flourish on the other. So I'll use this as an example. If you're going to provide a massive rebate for someone who owns a chattel house to maintain it every 3 to 4 years, then it means that there are going to be a group of people who are skilled in maintaining a chattel house in the manner in which it was built, who recognize that, well, you know something, I can find employment. I can find employment that allows me to have a good life. Not that I will find employment that I gotta be hunting and scratching and I am at below minimum wage. No, you're gonna find employment that allows you to have a life, because there's no anywhere from 5 to 10,000 houses that I know. Boy, if I just get to work on a third of them, I set for the rest of my life. And I could build a company around that. So you move that from the chattel house and you move that into a house built of limestone and or brick. And then you decide, okay, as part of that, I now want to preserve the foodways, which means that I'm going to incentivize my planters to grow particular crops, and a set of people who are going to come who are going to take that product and turn it into added value, whether it's a particular type of food or preserve or whatever. But you're literally creating industry, and you're creating a sustainable industry, because you've got the policy in place that says, yeah, I'm going to incentivize this, which means that it allows it then to become sustainable, which means that people realize, oh, there's a place to go and gravitate towards. Likewise, the person who's making that product realizing, boy, I need someone to help me sell it. Who will help me? Well, there's a young fella there or a young lady who's really good with an iPhone, got access to the net, that create a really nice page for you to sell your product. The banks are able to say, yeah, we could easily allow you someone to swipe a card and you get paid, we're going to charge you too much. And all of a sudden, you have an industry. All of a sudden, people who were wondering, boy, how are you going to eat tomorrow? All of a sudden recognize, I can make a living. And not only that, I can actually thrive. And you've, in one fell swoop, created the foundation for a heritage industry that not only has legs for the people locally, but then people who come are going to be the cherry on top. Because unless it's sustainable locally, we're going to be in trouble. 9/11, COVID, ash, who knows what else. The planes can't fly, the ships can't come, you're here.
I think we learned that it was a major faux pas not to have a very comprehensive domestic tourism policy from back in the day. We only realized this every time a crisis hits and we turn to the local population for the economic salvation of whatever business, which is not fair,
yes.
And that is not sustainable.
And it's not.
So we are really regroup and rethink, and like what you just said, because what you just said will spark entrepreneurship, gender and youth empowerment, and as I said, poverty alleviation, and that's where we need to give young people an opportunity, because they're the ones, with that technology, they could transform this industry overnight if given the chance. So what you just said there makes complete sense, and I really agree. But you said something earlier with respect to the knowledge, and the knowledge is in museums and different places, and I'm saying in a day and age where these millennials, I call them these millennials because they're so far removed from me.
They are.
40 characters or less. I mean, when I was working in my last job, I had some millennials on staff, and you know me, I'm very, a verbosity, is
like we talking about?
Yes, they were like, no, you can't think because it's 40 characters or less, nobody's going to read it.
Yep.
And how, in terms of the museums, do we have to be more interactive technology instead of people coming and read a book, which may not happen, especially with Gen Z coming behind the millennials?
So we go back to that earlier thing where I talked about what COVID has taught us is about content development. And the content development is for everybody, and realizing that one thing can't work for all, so you need to de-aggregate and have the people there to help you send out that message. That has been, I think, one of the better pivots coming out of COVID. I don't want to say positive, but better pivots coming out of COVID, where you recognize that you've got this content, but you now need to find a new way to channel it, and you need to find the young people who understand how that works.
Right.
They have the understanding of the past and what that means, but they also have the understanding of, okay, this is how you take a 300-page book, send out a message in 10 characters and an image that captures the essence of that book, whether it is by a meme or whether it's by 30 seconds of saying something on what the particular thing is, and recognize that there's an audience out there who want to hear that message. Right. And I think that has been one of the things that we need to quickly pivot to in terms of content generation.
I completely agree with you. People. I have to pivot quickly to my topic that I promised Barbados that I was going to delve into.
Right.
A topic that I believe needs major focus right now, especially since we are establishing links with the African continent, the mother country. Mm-hmm. It is a deep passion within me, and you know that, because when I went to Nigeria, and I felt guilty when you said just no, you call the historians and pick their brain for free, because I did that with you. And I had to make a presentation in Nigeria on the links between Africa and Barbados and South Carolina, and you were the man I called, and you gave me such phenomenal information about the links. As I said, we are very strong British heritage, but we have strong African heritage, and I don't really think Bajans realize what is like this is African. Yeah. I mean, from it could be our folklore, it could be music, dance, food, our religion, customs, our language, our fashion, our hair.
Our hair, there you go.
You know what I mean? Or everything that influences us that some of us don't even know, the way we speak, how we say it, the medicinal herbs we use when it comes straight across the Middle Passage. I am totally fired up about closer links with Africa, straight across the pond. Remember Sarah Palin said I could see Russia from my house? Yes. I could see Africa from my house. A direct straight line to Africa from Barbados or the Caribbean. Yep. Yet we have gone everywhere else except across to Africa. Yeah. And I have often wondered, why, in terms of our history, it's been left off our school curricula. Mm-hmm. We have kind of completely, we've been perfectly colonized by the British, but I think that has robbed us in terms of our interests, in terms of learning about our African heritage a priority, going to Africa. I think more Barbadians now are going. I went twice, and any Barbadian with African ancestry, maybe it be a black Barbadian or a Bajan white Barbadian. I think, everybody may or may not have been touched by that, but I believe that everybody should go to Africa. I went and it changed my life. You always knew something was missing. You knew when you saw it, you now realized this is what it was. This is the missing link. Until you stand in a Elmina Castle, a slave fort, or you go along a slave route, and you could feel the spirit of your ancestors, the suffering, the fear, the anxiety. You go through the gate of no return. It changes your life. And there's such a connection with us as the African people. They look like us, they talk like us. You feel the connection. So from your perspective, what is the potential for this? Tell us about some of the linkages between Barbados and Africa that we may not know about, and how do we change this trajectory in terms of us understanding and wanting to close ranks with our African heritage and to learn more about the mother country.
All right. We don't have all day.
But no, we have a couple of minutes.
but the key thing, okay, let's deal with education first. All right, so again, the museum 15 years ago redid its African gallery because government at the time recognized that it needed to teach African history in both the primary and secondary schools. Education lays the foundation, because what education does is to hopefully strip you away of ignorance and of what people now call fake news, and hopefully gets you to a place where you have a better understanding of a place and its people. That's one. So education is key. Two, recognizing that when on a Saturday, notwithstanding the macaroni, that we cook cuckoo and have some flying fish or saltfish or pork chop, depending on where you are. That you're in fact doing fufu, but in a different way. That come Independence Day, when you make your konki, you're really making kenke, but a bit more sweet, because our palate,
which is African.
Yes, which is African. Our palate is sweet. Recognizing although I don't hear it very much nowadays, when you're out in the street and somebody says, Anna, come on, that we're using a word that is West African, that has been retained through all of our creolization.
And spread to the Gullah-Geechee.
And spread to the Gullah-Geechee.
In South Carolina.
In South Carolina.
Yes, by way of Barbados.
You know,
it's amazing.
That we're speaking to that connection that is both ancestral and contemporary. Because on the flip, when you look at African hi-fi, there is really, a lot of it is reggae and calypso and soca going back, being transformed. That when we, even religion on both sides, whether it's Christianity being spread in West Africa by Black West Indian students taught at Cochrane College, or the syncretic religion in the other direction, trying to hold on to your African religions, but marrying it to Christianity during a period where you weren't allowed to practice it. So how people hid Obia within Christianity. These are those connections. But then there's the post-independence movement that happened in Western Africa in the 50s and 60s, and the amount of Barbadians, West Indians as well, who went and taught there. Camu Braffitt comes to mind, and there are others. So there's been always this movement in a circuitous way between the two. I think as we move to have diplomatic relations,
and hopefully air links.
Hopefully the air links will no longer be going through Europe.
Yes.
Because realize that all of the travel links utilize existing trade links that have been there from the 17th to 18th century. I leave that there.
You're absolutely correct.
Understand
Never looked at it that way, but you're right.
Understand how we travel.
Yes.
And the reasons why. So it'd be nice to travel, is it 3,000 miles?
Yes,
Dead
about
east,
that.
and be there in about 5 to 6 hours?
Yeah,
okay.
about 7-ish, depending where you're going. If you're going to Ghana, how deep in you're going into. But like Senegal will probably be about 5, yeah.
And recognize that when we as Barbadians and West Indians say, oh, we're from Africa, when we say West Africa, we're as far north as Senegambia and as far north as the Congo, Angola, but we don't know then from that west how far east. No one actually can say, well, how deep into the hinterland are going, because we all know the ports of embarkation. We don't know where in the hinterland people are coming from, at least not all of them.
And some were said to march at least 600 miles
or more.
Or more in.
Yes.
So you're right, we don't really know where these people may have come from.
And a few that might have come around the Cape from East Africa and South Africa, because there's evidence of that going to Curacao and then being sold on. So there's a lot of that to unpack. But I think we've reached that stage now in the education, because think back 40 years ago, if a Barbadian said they were African, people went off the mad. Well, guess what? We can say that we are proud descendant of Africans now, and there isn't that resistance to that. There's an understanding.
Correct.
But there now needs to be the understanding that allows us to engage.
Yes.
And I think education has allowed that. We now need to put those things in place that allow those links, that we can then further break down what has been almost an ideological barrier in some cases, misinformation, lots of it on the other, that has caused African peoples in Africa and African descendant peoples in the diaspora viewing each other as the other, and not in fact viewing themselves as, well, this is really family.
Yes.
And there's a need then to make.
I think as we're going back,
connection.
like when I went, there's a healthy curiosity.
Yes.
Because when I went to Nigeria, it was at a trade show, and the CTO was there promoting the Caribbean, and I happened to be there, and I was the only Barbadian, so I was pushing Barbados, of course. And there is a healthy curiosity. A lot of Africans are going to Dubai.
Yes.
And they are world travelers. So this is this thought that Africans, they don't have money, or they don't travel, or they don't come to the Caribbean. They are interested in coming. We just need to invite them, like we go to America or Europe and invite them in. Yeah. We need to invite our brothers and sisters in.
If we were going to talk about education, at what point are we going to introduce African languages as one of the languages to be taught within our school systems. Spanish, French. I remember some schools did German. I don't know if anyone
Russian,
is
Chinese,
doing Portuguese.
Italian, sorry, Chinese.
Italian.
Yes.
But
not African.
But not African. What about Swahili? Although,
but it's in, I'm telling you, where we go to all these different places, we never talk about let's go to Africa.
Let's go to
but
Africa.
just quickly, to just, in terms of our history and in terms of the fact that the Barbados Slave Code of 1661 was created here, legalizing slavery, and it was pushed right through the region, up to South Carolina. I actually believe that the systemic racism and the radicalized violence against black people, I mean, it's all connected to me. I'm not saying Barbados caused it, but that whole movement of slavery and the thought process that came from it, and then the behaviors towards treating black people like chattel, etc. But in terms of a museum, do you think Barbados should have a state-of-the-art slave museum based on our history of slavery, of global repute right here in Barbados? Do you think that's... I could understand we need to have a sugar museum as well, but a slave museum.
My answer to that is yes, and that such is being planned by the Barbados Museum and Historical Society.
I am so happy to hear that. And the slave burial, I mean, I mentioned that to somebody this morning and they were like, huh? I said, yeah, the largest excavated slave burial site probably in the Western Hemisphere is here in Barbados. The young person did not know what I was talking about.
So in the next,
in terms of promoting those sites, those slave sites.
In the next few months, you'll see a lot of engagement coming from the museum in terms of educating people even more about the enslaved burial ground at Newton. Having those public programs that direct people to that. And coming out of that discussion to have a museum that looks at the legacy of transatlantic slavery.
Can we get a monument at the landing site as a major transshipment point and entrepot of slavery? A landing site, a monument on the pierhead, like one that people could go to and pay reverence and homage to our foreparents.
I think that's very important.
Because, you know, their African blood is coursing through our Barbadian veins. But I think that right there at the landing point, the first point of terra firma after that horrific Middle Passage and that horrific, you know, in the holding cells and the bottomless pit that Bob Marley sang about and we sang along. I didn't know what that was until I looked into one with horror. And, you know, they walked from the hinterland. It was, you know, it wasn't just the Middle Passage. It was the entire experience. Those who reach here were the most resilient of the group. Something there to commemorate it, that this is terra firma where they landed.
Not only just there. Let's say that there are lots of sites in Barbados that speak to different aspects of enslavement and then the freedom out of enslavement that need to be commemorated, that need to be signed, that people need to know. And we need to start going about this in a systematic way as a form of education for some, re-education for others. But in reconciling that part of our past, allowing the authenticity and acceptance of what that past is and how it then feeds into who we are and then can be channeled in positive ways to speak to many things, not only just tourism is important.
So Kevin, I want to thank you so much. And in terms of the whole African, remember we had this discussion that even though we're African, you know, I could go back a couple generations and I'm also Italian and Scottish and British, but
we're many things.
But by dint of my pigmentation, I hold fast to the color I see in the mirror, while still paying homage to my other nationalities as well. And I think I speak for all Barbadians, but I would like to thank you so much. This was such a stimulating conversation. I hope everyone enjoys listening as much as we enjoy sharing this information with them. I want to thank you, Kevin, and I look forward to having more conversations like this with you. I will look forward to all of the developments that you say are upcoming. I look forward to them with a great enthusiasm and eagerness. So thank you once again for spending some time conversing with us today.
Thanks. And thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming, my dear.
Same. Blessings.